It is Dynasty Rookie Draft season, and I'm about to bring you my top 12 Dynasty Rookie plays for 2023. We're talking SuperFlex, so we are looking at formats, of course, that favor the quarterback position, and this is it. We had a really interesting draft, and a lot of people are saying this is one of the weaker rookie classes in a while. We're going to talk a little bit about strategy for that as well. But I'm excited about this rookie draft. I'm excited about getting the rankings out. These are published. You link description below. We got tiers. We got breakdowns. So let's get right into it. 2023, number one on the board. So the first pick overall is going to be Bijan Robinson. And this guy, this is pretty much hands down the most obvious. He is in a tier by himself, tier one. Bijan all alone up there. Basically, everything came together perfect for Bijan. When I say that, I mean landing spot perfection, right? Atlanta wants to run the football. So we've got a run heavy offense, heavily invested in this player. And by the way, Bijan on a run heavy offense, this is the ultimate, not just for Dynasty Superflex, but also for regular redraft leagues. He will go in the first round, possibly one of the first, maybe the first running back off the board this year in redraft leagues as well. This is a no-brainer. So Bijan Robinson, number one overall, and he gets a tier by himself. He is solo in the one tier. This is a trade. This is a pick that it's worth trading up for in your dynasty league. So if you have a chance to trade up to 1.1, give it up a little something, totally worth doing, because it's the rare case where a running back is going to be worth more even than some potential quarterbacks. So that's the obvious one. Now, going on to spot number 2 in our rankings, Anthony Richardson, quarterback, Indianapolis Colts. Now, Richardson is a pure athlete that projects as a run-first quarterback in the NFL. He reminds me a bit of a more athletic version of Cam Newton. The passing is really, really sketchy. He could bust as an NFL quarterback. The skill set as a thrower looked really, really bad to my eyes. Just over 50%. Just over 50% in college in terms of his accuracy. If we take a look at his college, I mean, it's, 327 attempts, 53% completion. So this was pretty bad. But the upside for a player like Richardson, all these rushing yards in college, 654 rushing yards in 2022. He's super fast, 4.4340, which is crazy for a quarterback. The metrics are off the charts. So this is your home run swing. Now, in some leagues that I'm in, here's where it gets interesting. In some leagues, it might actually make more sense to go after Anthony Richardson rather than Bijan Robinson. And I'm going to explain what scenario that is the case for. So let's say you're in a league where your team is super non-competitive, right? You're in a full rebuild mode, and you feel like you're at least 2 full seasons away from getting that. You don't have quarterbacks, you got nothing. In that scenario, if you have pick 1.1, there is merit to trading back, even just ideally just the one pick, picking up a future piece. You might even be able to squeeze a 2024 first out of somebody to go from 1.2 to 1.1. Like, that would be the ultimate. Anthony Richardson, if he hits, has QB top 3 or 4 QB upside. He will be in the conversation with a Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is the perfect comparable. I think Jalen is a bit of a better thrower, but that's probably even a better comparable, where I actually think Richardson is a better, faster runner and a better athlete than Hurts, but Hurts is probably a better thrower than Richardson. But that's your upside. So if you don't think you can compete in the next couple of years, there is some merit, as long as you get the right package, to moving down to 1.2 from 1.1, but that's about it. I wouldn't get too crazy. I still think Bijan's a great player to have, even if you're in a rebuild. That's a guy you can build around because he's so young and he should be dominant for the next 5 to 6 seasons. So that's fine. But Richardson, number 2 overall, he jumps over both Stroud and Bryce Young. primarily because his upside is so much higher, especially than Bryce Young's. Bryce Young projects as more of a high floor player. We'll talk about him in a second. But Anthony Richardson, 1.2 overall in the Dynasty rankings. And he too has his own solo tier. So when I talk about tiers for Dynasty Fantasy Football, it's really important to understand that these are places where if you're in the same tier, you probably don't want to trade up or down within a tier because the players are all kind of the same. But like if I have 1.3, there is merit to trying to trade up to 1.2 to get Richardson. It's a tier break, meaning the players after him are significantly worse. It's funny because right after the draft, I put out my initial thoughts, and I was saying Richardson's going to be number 2. And at that point, consensus was still Bryce Young. But I think consensus is catching up to your boy, and Richardson is now being pushed up to 1.2 overall. I've got another little break from consensus coming up here in a second. So as we exit tier 2 with Richardson, we get into tier 3. And tier 3 has 3 players in it. Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs, and CJ Stroud. Now, this is a really interesting tier because you can order these however you want. I don't really differentiate a ton. I'm gonna talk about the differences between these players. I don't differentiate a ton. So let's start with Bryce Young. Okay, Bryce Young was taken 1.1 overall. He lands with the Panthers, a good landing spot. They don't have much going on as a receiving core, but they did pick up Mingo early in second round, a nice wide receiver to pair up with Young. Here's some of the negatives, though, on Young. Number one, college career doesn't show much in terms of rushing upside. As a matter of fact, he barely ran at all in 2021, and in 2022, just 185 yards rushing. He has decent speed at 4.63. He's actually faster. He's quite fast for a quarterback. This is excellent speed. He just doesn't run a ton. Now, that could change in the pros, but for now, he hasn't done it. He's much more of a pocket passer. The completion percentage is good. The touchdown to interception ratios are great. Everything looks pretty good. He's considered an elite decision maker. And I look at Bryce Young as a high floor, low ceiling quarterback where with the 1.1 security of that pick, he's going to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to be successful. Will he pull it off? We'll find out. But he'll get lots and lots of chances to be a successful NFL quarterback. I don't think the ceiling is like Richardson's, which is why he's below him. I don't see him as a top 6 fantasy scoring QB. Pretty much super unlikely. Could he get to a top 12 guy at some point in his career? Yeah. But I think of him a little bit more as a prototypical or stereotypical prototypical QB2 type. Think like Kirk Cousins, pocket passer, nothing crazy, but on your SuperFlex team, he helps you hold down that QB2 spot. You're comfortable. You start him every week, right? So do you want to reach for upside with a Richardson? This is why he's behind Richardson. Do I want to reach for upside with Richardson, or do I want to kind of secure my QB2? Well, I'll tell you where you might make the decision to go with Young ahead of Richardson. That might be, there's not too many. I guess the only time I could really foresee it is if you have this team that's so stacked everywhere that you just want to make sure you don't mess up. And you need a second quarterback. You don't have one. But even then, I think Richardson's locked into 2 years of starting, even if he sucks. So I'd rather take 2 years with the running upside and then get it figured out later. So I don't know. There's basically no scenario where I want Bryce Young ahead of Anthony Richardson just because the upside and the ceiling for Richardson is so much higher. Again, the bust potential is higher as well, but that's how we do it. That's why we roll the dice, and that's why we gamble on fantasy football. So Bryce Young slots in at number 3, first player in tier 3. Next up, listen, and these are all interchangeable for me, but I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs, number 4 overall. Now, if you want to switch these orders around, that's fine. Tier 3 is really, really similar across the board. But Jahmyr Gibbs is an undersized running back coming in at 5'9", 199 pounds that was picked number 12 overall in the NFL draft. The Lions actively have been trying to fill this role. They had Swift in there. Swift just showed himself to be injured and just not the guy that they were hoping for. He gets hurt way too often. They could not rely on him. So The Lions go back to the well here and pick another shifty, super fast running back with incredible 1.12 draft capital. Now, this normally I don't like an undersized player. That's not my thing, especially a running back that's undersized. I'm like, why are you doing that? Right? And that is a concern here with Gibbs. He's going to be playing with David Montgomery. So there's clearly a bruiser back on that team that's pretty good that will be playing ahead of him. And running backs are not like wide receivers. Wide receivers, you could kind of wait with some competition a season or two. Running backs, every year, the clock is burning. It's like an option. It's like a stock option with a time constraint on it. And as time flows, the value just declines on the running back because he's got a much, much smaller window of years to play. So you can't throw away like 2 or 3 seasons with a running back. All of a sudden they're 26 and they're finished. Now, what I love about Gibbs is he is super young at 21. So we're getting a younger running back. Compare that to Najee Harris, for example, who came out of college at 24. Super different, right? So Najee Harris, 2 seasons in, he's already 26. Like, that dude's old. This guy will be young for a while. I like it. CJ Spiller is the comparable we get here on Player Profiler, but there's a couple of other running backs. Jamal Charles is my favorite in terms of an example of a running back that was 200 pounds, that had a very successful 5'9", 200 pounds, that had an incredibly successful NFL career. Charles was even 5'11", so a little lower body mass compared to Gibbs, who's at 29.4. He's actually fine for the height, 200 pounds. I'd love to see him at 205, 207, just a little bit more, but I think we'll be okay here. What I don't expect is a workhorse. I'm not looking for or expecting 20-plus touches a game out of this kid. What I'm expecting is big plays, passing game involvement. Think RB2 with RB1 as the upside, is the ceiling because of the speed. 4.36 speed is about the fastest any running back is ever going to be. So big play wide receiver, big play running back. And again, can you take him ahead of Stroud? And I have him ranked ahead of Stroud here, but this is really, really important. So let's jump back over to here. I'm going to make an argument in SuperFlex for Stroud now over Gibbs and Gibbs over Stroud. So again, going back to the original example, I'm going to bring this back here. If your team is ready to win now, this year right now, and your league is tricky to trade in, which is a second part. So quarterbacks that are successful are always going to have more value, in my opinion, than successful running backs, because quarterbacks just last so much longer, and they're even rarer than finding a running back. So a quality quarterback, like let's say you took Stroud here. Well, you've probably got a 2 or 3 year window to sell him for, at worst, like a future first or that kind of thing. I think if you're down a running back and you pick up Stroud, you can easily trade him pretty much even before the season, at least for a very good running back and a pick. So you could probably take a great quarterback, even without with great draft capital like Stroud, and trade it for a running back. So there's an argument for Stroud and just all quarterbacks ahead of running backs. The flip side is it's pretty rare to find a running back that was taken in the top 12 picks. So that's really the difference. It's unusual nowadays to see running backs go in the first round at all. It's usually never more than one, and they're rarely in the top 12. So the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs was taken this high, that much draft capital, is really what pushed him ahead of Stroud for me, just as a straight up. Now, if I've got a team ready to win now and I'm down a running back and I've got lots of quarterback help, I'm going Gibbs over Stroud. Like, why bother with the whole take Stroud and try to figure out a trade and all of that? You can just take Gibbs and roll the dice with it. Try to win this year. I do have a team exactly like that, and I made that exact move. That's why I'm saying it. But in general, if your team is more regular, you're middle of the pack, it probably would be wiser to take Stroud ahead of Gibbs, just because you could probably always, even if you needed a running back, all right, you could probably grab Stroud, send him to the guy who needs a quarterback bad and is desperate. You might get back Travis Etienne in a first. Okay. I'll take it. So, I think you could probably build more pieces for your team off of Stroud, like just more equity. The flip side is Jahmyr Gibbs probably helps you win this year. And if Jahmyr Gibbs turns into Jamal Charles, it will be almost impossible to get him. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think the Lions are going to give him that kind of workload. But if they did, wow, So again, I think probably Stroud should be ahead of Gibbs for the more conservative, but if you're going for it now, Gibbs. And the reason Gibbs makes the ranking number at 4 instead of 5 is, for me, it's just so rare to find such a top 15 draft pick running back that I think you have to give respect. We got to give the juice to the draft capital for a running back. Give the juice. All right. Speaking of Stroud, I don't know what's not to like about this kid. He's got a nice landing spot in Houston. Do the Texans have great weapons at wide receiver? No. But he's got a long career ahead of him. They have some wide receivers. They don't have a lot of weapons. But more importantly, they're probably going to be down and throwing a ton. Stroud will be thrown to the fire. His NFL career is flawless. I mean, his college career is pretty flawless. Look at these completion percentages. Now, I get it. He's on, I think he came off of, I think it was Ohio State. But he came out of a football factory where the quarterbacks all kind of do well. All right, they have good players around him. But who cares? This guy completed 71% of his passes in 2021, 66.3% in 2022, 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Now, the rushing is a concern. Yeah, he's at Ohio State. The rushing is a concern because he didn't do much of it in college. But when I look at his speed, I mean, it's not bad. It's comparable to a Josh Allen in terms of his raw speed. And I think that he claims that he didn't need to run, so they didn't run in college, but he can do it. So he says he's got the skill set. He could do it. We all remember what Deshaun Watson looked like for the Texans. And I got to say, this quarterback does not look that dissimilar across the board. And Deshaun also fell a little bit. So I think Stroud has a little more upside. He's got the right size, 6'3", cannon for an arm, age, super young. Everything we want to see in a QB prospect. Obviously, he's got to put it all together in the NFL. Anybody could bust, but I like his chances. I like I said, he looked amazing in college. 44-6, 41-6. The touchdown inception ratios are spectacular. CJ Stroud, number 5 overall. All right. Now we exit tier 3. And this is really important. Like I said, those 3 players in tier 3, whatever order you take them in, it doesn't really matter to me. Any one of them could go ahead, and it's totally fine. That's why tiers are really, really important to understand. I want to trade into a tier, but if I'm in a tier, I'm not making a trade within the tier. So if I have pick 1-3, I'm not doing it. I'm not making a move. Or if I pick 1-5, I'm not trying to trade up to 1-3. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Don't trade a young spot for Stroud. Just take the guy that you like. It doesn't matter. And I would say the same for Gibbs. Now we get to tier 4, and that is wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. He was the first wide receiver selected. He lands in a spot where he'll be playing on a team that has both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf there. So the year 1 prospects aren't the best for JSN. But the talent is there, and Lockett is old as fuck. Within a season or 2, he could rise to a top 12 NFL wide receiver. He's always going to probably be sharing the spotlight with Metcalf, but that's fine. They've worked as a great 1-2 punch in Seattle for many, many years, where Lockett and Metcalf were both sort of really, really top 12 producers. So I don't think it's going to be a problem at all. I think the talent will shine through for JSN. You wind up with JSN after this draft, you're going to be super happy. He's in a tier by himself. And once again, a tier worth trading up for. I cannot forgive, passing on JSN for one of these other guys, unless you have some immediate need where Jaxon Smith is probably not going to be a contributor or do much for your team this year. So if you need something for this year, that's a spot to trade out of. Somebody will want JSN. And if you need a player now, one trade I really like is, think about this one. If you have 1.6 for whatever reason, but your team is super competitive, it's ready to win. You just need a wide receiver. You could do something like taking a veteran and a future first for JSN. So think like Keenan Allen and a 2024 first. the benefit of taking Keenan Allen and giving Njigba is you're basically weakening that person's team a little bit because he's got a less productive player this year, and it helps hopefully ensure that next year's pick will be in the top 6. And if you did that, you're winning. So that's an interesting approach to a trade out of that tier. All right, so next we get a trio of wide receivers, and we drop down to tier 5. A trio of wide receivers available here. And again, this is all the same tier, and different people will have these guys looking different. So first up for me is Zay Flowers in this tier. He was picked 1.22 overall. And this is a really interesting one because Zay Flowers is falling down a lot of draft boards. Get rid of these other tabs here, but he's fallen down a lot. People think that landing with the Ravens is a bad landing spot, and I just don't agree. I think it's a great landing spot for him. So let's think about what's going on the Raiders. Number one, they've got Odell Beckham. He's kind of like a one-year guy that we'll see if he gets through a year healthy. Fine. They've got Rashad Bateman. Rashad Bateman has had a chance and done nothing. He's had multiple opportunities and done nothing. So I don't think Bateman is like a real threat here for targets. One thing that the Ravens did have, and they don't have it anymore, was Hollywood Brown, a very similar sized wide receiver to what Zay Flowers is. Very similar size and style. So I think Zay Flowers falls right into the Hollywood Brown role. He's got speed. He's got route running abilities. He can go up and catch a touchdown. There's a lot of things to like about Flowers. He absolutely dominated the targets in his college. And this is a really, really important thing that I always look at. You look at his college stats and mostly his target share. And I want wide receivers that dominated college, and he did just that. So Zay Flowers for me, number 7 overall, pick 1.7. And again, if you want Flowers, he will not go at pick 1.7 more often than not. He is one of those guys that falls a little bit. So you can trade down a couple spots and probably still get Flowers. You can probably even sometimes get him. I've seen him go as far back as 112. So Zay Flowers is the faller. And if he starts falling too much in your draft, if it's 111, 112, that's not a bad place to maybe look at a cheap bargain trade up from your second round pick, especially if you're midway through the second and you can maybe pair up a second and a third and get up to like Zay Flowers, who fell a little bit. I'm all about that. Next on the tier list, for tier 5, pick 8 overall, Quentin Johnson. Quentin Johnson brings elite size and speed to the table. 6'3", 208 pounds, 4.57 40. Finds himself in a somewhat ideal situation. He's locked in with Justin Herbert for at least the first part of his career. Keenan Allen is 31 and on his last legs. Mike Williams is literally always hurt and cannot be trusted to make it through a season. Quentin Johnson could emerge as the WR1 for the Chargers within a season or two. Now, I don't think it's going to happen this year. So again, much like Jaxon Smith-Njigba, he is less good in 2023 relative to potentially Zay Flowers or our next wide receiver, Jordan Addison. But I think it's important to note that Quentin Johnson, had a strong but less dominant college career than, for example, Jaxon Smith-Njigba or even Zay Flowers, commanding about a 21% target share. Not as many touchdowns as you'd expect, considering his size. And there are some potential, let's call them flaws in his mechanics. The way he catches the football, he's a bit more of a body catcher than a hands guy. He'll need to work on some things to get to an elite level. But the Chargers actively went after this kid. He went right after JSN. So I'm fine with it. He was the second. He was a second wide receiver off the board. The Chargers wanted him. They specifically wanted him. So I like it. I'm not going to get too crazy with this one. Draft capital is king. Next up in tier 5, we've got Jordan Addison. He is pick 9 overall for me, 1.9. And Addison slides into the WR2 role for the Vikings. He's got the draft capital, the pedigree we want. I'm a little bit concerned about his slight frame at 5'11 and 173 pounds and how that will hold up in the NFL. We got a lot of these little guys here that seem to be doing okay. It's just one of these things that, it just makes me crazy. They're so small now. But apparently, I guess the lack of physicality or legal physicality in the secondary anymore, where you're really just not allowed to put hits on these wide receivers the way that you used to, seems to be lending itself to more and more of these smaller players taking over at the wide receiver position. So, fine by me. As far as Addison speed goes, I was a little concerned, let's call it, with his speed being 173-pound wide receiver. I kind of think a 4.5 40 is a little bit slow. It's a little slow for me. But more so, he's going to spend his career as the number 2 to Justin Jefferson. Now, is that a good thing? I think, yeah. I think for this player, it's totally fine. Like, what's wrong with the number 2? He's never going to be the alpha on his team, but Jefferson's going to command so much attention that Addison will have lots and lots of opportunities for easy receptions and just churning out fantasy points. So the upside here is probably not WR1 overall. As a matter of fact, it's not. So understand, let's understand what we're looking at here. The upside here is maybe a top 15 fantasy producer, in his best moments. So I'll be honest, this is a spot where I'm looking to trade down or trade out of the first round. I don't really see Addison like that much better than some wide receivers you get right at the beginning of the second round, like Mingo. Again, he'll start and he'll be a useful piece, yeoman-like, but not going to probably make the difference on your team to the level where he's going to help you win a championship. It's going to be a solid piece along the way, but not going to be the reason. So if you're sitting on like 1.8, 1.9, that's an area that I'm generally looking to trade out of if I can. And by trade outs, I'm looking for deals that include at the very least a 2024 first, as I do think the 2024 class will be a little bit deeper. 2024 and a piece. So if you can get a nice piece and a 2024 first for this spot, do it all day. If I could trade this straight up for Christian Watson, I'm making that trade. I'd rather take a shot on a guy who can elevate himself to WR1 overall. So that's sort of the type of trade I'd be looking to make if I'm holding that pick. All right, tier drop. Here we drop it down to tier 6, and we got quite a few names here, and I'll actually do the entire tier, even though I'm really trying to stick to or I'll do some of this tier, even though I'm trying to stick to a top 12 for the purpose of this video. But next up, we've got Dalton Kincaid, tight end, Bills. First round pedigree for Kincaid. What I love about his college stats, he dominated as a pass catcher on his team in 2022 with a 21.7% target share. Those are Travis Kelce type numbers. That's a massive target share for a tight end, especially a college tight end. This kid is not here. Make no mistake. He's not here to block. He's not really even sized properly for a blocking tight end. He is an athletic pass catching tight end. They're going to use him in the slot. He will play the Beasley role. I think, especially in TE premium formats, 2 tight end setups where you need 2 of these guys. You could take Dalton Kincaid right here, pick 10 overall. Bills need this type of player. They don't have any size in the pass catching core. They're all little guys. So we get a little bit of size, get that slot presence, that safety net for Josh Allen. I'm loving this spot. Just treat him like, Kyle Pitts. Everybody went crazy for Kyle Pitts. What's the difference here? Better team, better situation, just as much pedigree. Love Kincaid. All right, next up, we've got Will Levis, quarterback, Tennessee Titans. Now, Levis drops to pick 2.02 in the real NFL draft. This kid is raw. When I say raw, I mean the 19 touchdown, 10 interceptions, not great. I don't even know what the negative rushing yards are. It probably took a bunch of sacks last year. He's athletic, but he's not as athletic as you would expect. I mean, he's got a 4.75 40, which is no different than Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Like, he's got the same speed as those guys, but he's a little more willing to run the football. He's a bit of a crazy guy. I mean, I don't know. He's got a personality. It's really, really interesting. I think he's a raw kid. He's got a cannon for an arm. The accuracy needs work. The quarterbacking itself needs work. He's a gunslinger, though. I think he could work out just fine in the NFL. Like, I think he might become a player. And this late in a super draft startup, we're towards the end of the first round. The upside, if Levis hits, if they can get him sort of to be good, the upside is huge. You get a starting quarterback. He's got some running chops. He's got a little moxie, a bit of a gunslinger mentality, crazy good arm. So I think this is the spot to take the chance on Will Levis. Do I think he'll get the starting nod this year? I'm leaning no. I think Tannehill will get one more season, but they clearly don't like Malik Willis. I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to hear somebody, well, what about Malik Willis? No. They showed last year when they played, I believe the name was Josh Dobbs, over Malik Willis, that Malik Willis is no good. They can't play him. He sucks. So they've given up in effect on Malik Willis, and now this kid's here, and he will get his shot. They don't want to keep Tannehill. They just kind of think Tannehill is not doing anything for them. They want Will Levis to win the job, but I don't think that'll happen year one. And it might be better for Levis, although I don't think so. I'm not a big fan of sit and learn. I'm not into that for quarterbacks. You got to play. Guys, if you think I'm wrong, let me know what your rankings are for some of these players. How do you have tier 5 ranked? Quentin Johnson, Addison, and Flowers. I mean, a lot of people are putting Addison first in that. I've seen Quentin Johnson go ahead. I even saw Quentin Johnson go ahead of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Like, it's crazy. They're all over the place, which is fun, and that's why fantasy is fun. We'll see who's right in the future. But let me know in the comments section below what you think in terms of your rankings. Now we get to pick 12, and we're still in tier 6. And again, the way I see these drafts, pretty much anybody in the tier is somewhat interchangeable. There is a name I'm probably going to be elevating up into this tier shortly, but you'll have to kind of check my rankings over at dfsarmy.com. Keep an eye on those. They are out in full, and I'll have my full Dynasty rankings, best ball rankings, everything's coming out now. So it's all on dfsarmy.com. You go right here to season long and get all the different rankings right there. Right? So 12 overall, I went with Devon Achane, running back, Miami Dolphins. Now, we got to take a look at this kid's stats because he is a tiny running back and the type of player I normally stay the hell away from. But this was the fastest running back pretty much ever, running a 4.32 40. He's super fast. 188 pounds is way too small. This is not a player that can carry a workload, but the Dolphins have such a dynamic offense, and they've been wanting this type of player for so many years. They've been searching for that fast. They just want speed on that team. I think they just love the speed with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane are going to be racing. They're just putting together this kind of a team. And what I like about Achane is he's never going to be this, workhorse 3-down grinder, but he makes for a really nice running back that should have some PPR upside, should be able to catch a pass, should be used a decent amount in the past. Yeah, he caught 36 catches in 10 games last year. So that's 3.6 receptions per game in college. That's not bad. Sometimes 4. Okay. That's probably what we should expect in the NFL. Maybe 4 to 6 receptions. Get a little bit more of that slot receiver kind of action, so to speak. Couple of rushing plays, couple of end arounds, big play attempts, that kind of thing. So I think he'll make for a nice running back flex for a lot of years. I don't see this kid as somebody who's going to elevate to where you're taking him as a top 12 running back pretty much ever. But I think he'll be maybe like a Danny Woodhead, maybe like a a vintage Reggie Bush type running back. And there is a precedent for one NFL running back that was the same size as him, Chris Johnson, who did have some incredible years. So what if he can hold up? Right? Worth a shot. So that wraps up our top 12 Dynasty 2023 Superflex rookie rankings. Now, a couple of honorable mentions here. I'm just going to mention some of the names. Rashee Rice just missed the list. Super productive in college, 30% target share on his team. Lands with the Chiefs that don't have a clear lead wide receiver. Massive upside if he hits, but we've seen quite a few of these second-round wide receivers just not get a lot of playing time. I mean, Sky Moore is around, and he's not doing anything. And they have Kadarius Toney. So, it's not a lock that, like, a second-round wide receiver gets used much, especially in his first year. It seems like the Chiefs don't really like to give too much work to rookies. Jonathan Mingo is the player that may be moving out of tier 7 up into tier 6 as well. I don't love his college production at all. Was not even really the lead wide receiver on his team, but I love the opportunity in Carolina. But we'll see if he makes it there. Again, check in regularly on the rankings. They are updated as news hits. So that's going to do it for 2023 top 12 Dynasty Superflex rookies. I love it. I'm drafting right now. Tons of leagues that I'm in. I know that you guys are too. So hit me up on Twitter at @FootballGeek. You got your trade questions, all that kind of stuff. I'm happy to answer. Maybe we'll even do a Dynasty trades show where you kind of drop your Dynasty trade questions, and we'll or even your team and who should I trade for, that kind of stuff. We'll get into your individual teams, help you crush some Dynasty like I do it. All right, that'll do it. Remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button and the notification bell so you can get these Dynasty and just general fantasy football breakdowns as they come out. I'll see you guys next time.